Ever feel like you're up against like this massive challenge
Oh, yeah.
and you've got like almost nothing to work with?
Uh-huh.
That's exactly what 70 disciples faced when Jesus sent them out on this huge mission. Like,
Wow.
no money, no extra clothes, just their faith.
Let's talk about a leap.
Right. So we're diving into these excerpts from Luke 10 through 12. It's called The Mission, the Lord's Prayer, and Eternal Priorities.
Okay.
And it really unpacks these chapters. We'll be looking at how faith and action work together,
Right.
how to connect with something bigger than ourselves, and some timeless advice for when things get tough.
It is a pretty amazing story
It is.
to really grasp what the disciples were doing.
Yeah.
Imagine having to announce a whole new world order,
Whoa.
which is basically what they were doing with this message of the kingdom of God.
Right.
Back then, it meant total upheaval, like politically, religiously.
The deal.
Yeah, people were desperate for change, and the disciples were the ones tasked with delivering this news.
So they're declaring this new world order. But on top of that, they're told to heal the sick.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine how overwhelming that must have been.
I know. And healing meant so much more back then. It wasn't just physical. It was like seeing God's power breaking through, a real tangible glimpse of the peace and wholeness that the kingdom of God promised.
What made the disciples ask Jesus about prayer when they got back from their mission?
Well, picture this. They come back from this incredible experience,
Yeah.
healing people, even casting out demons. They're like, whoa, even the demons listen to us.
Yeah.
They saw God's power firsthand and probably want to know how to access that themselves.
I see.
Seeing Jesus praying must have sparked a desire to deepen their own connection.
Yeah, like teach us how to do that.
Exactly.
And then Jesus gives them the Lord's Prayer, not like some magic formula, but like a guide to build that same intimacy.
Exactly. It's not about just saying the words, but aligning your heart with God's will.
Yeah.
And, one of the most radical things about the Lord's Prayer, it focuses on belonging together. It starts with, our Father, not my Father.
Oh, interesting.
Shifting it from just me and God to us together experiencing God's presence.
It puts the emphasis on community,
Exactly.
not just you by yourself in your faith.
Yeah,
But then chapter 12 takes a more serious tone
it does.
with these warnings from Jesus.
Oh, yeah. The mood definitely
Yep.
shifts.
Yeah.
There's this powerful call to be genuine, a warning against hypocrisy.
Right.
Jesus isn't just encouraging personal integrity, but challenging the whole religious system.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he was constantly confronting the religious elite
Yeah.
who looked pious on the outside,
Yeah.
but were often corrupt on the inside.
So it's not just about being a good person,
Right.
but dismantling systems that are unjust.
Exactly. It's about living your faith in a way that challenges those systems and creates a more just world.
Then there's that story about the rich fool who decides to build these bigger barns to store all his wealth.
Oh, yeah.
That one always gives me chills.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not here forever, isn't it?
It is.
It makes us look at what we're focused on.
Yeah.
Especially when we're worried about things like money.
Yeah.
It asks, what are we really building our lives on? Are we looking for security in temporary things or trusting in God?
That's such a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in trying to get more stuff, thinking it will bring security.
Right. But as that parable shows, true security doesn't come from what we gather, but from our relationship with God
Yeah.
and how we use what we've been given.
This idea of being rich toward God is interesting.
Yeah.
What does that look like in everyday life?
Well, it's not about getting rid of all your stuff,
Okay.
but about how you use it and where your heart is ultimately focused.
Mm-hmm.
It's about generosity, compassion,
Where?
using your resources to serve others and build God's kingdom.
You know, I used to struggle with giving.
Really?
I always felt like I didn't have enough.
Yeah.
But then I realized it wasn't about how much money I had,
Right.
but my mindset. Like I wasn't trusting in God's abundance.
That's a powerful insight.
Yeah,
And it gets to the heart of what it means to be rich toward God.
it does.
It's about
Wow.
shifting from fear and scarcity to abundance and trust.
It's realizing that true wealth comes from your relationship with God and how you impact others.
Exactly. Yeah, it really is a beautiful way to look at it, that your relationship with God is where true wealth is found. Even when things are hard, that connection brings security and peace.
Yeah, it reminds me of what Jesus says in Luke 12, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom." It's powerful, especially in a world that can feel so chaotic and uncertain.
Absolutely. It's like he's inviting us to let go of trying to control everything
Yeah.
and just rest in God's love, knowing he's got it.
Right.
That surrender frees us up to live with purpose.
That freedom helps us focus on loving and serving others.
Definitely.
Which makes me think of the story in Luke 10 where this lawyer asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?"
The setup for the Good Samaritan. That story really pushes us to think bigger about who our neighbor is. It's not just people who are like us or believe the same things.
It really shows the hypocrisy of the priest and the Levite.
Right.
They were supposed to be these religious examples, but they totally ignore the injured man.
Exactly. And it's the Samaritan, someone from a marginalized group
Right.
who goes above and beyond to show compassion and help. What's interesting is Jesus doesn't just tell the lawyer what to do.
Yeah.
He asks him, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who was robbed?
He's making him think critically
Yeah.
and challenging his assumptions.
It's a reminder that just blindly following rules or social norms isn't enough.
Right.
True compassion means stepping outside our comfort zones and recognizing everyone's worth and dignity.
That's tough, especially when the world often tells us to stick with people who are just like us.
You're right. It takes effort to break out of those patterns.
Yeah.
But the gospel calls us to widen our circle of compassion, to see God's image in every single person.
Even the people we might think of as different or even our enemies.
Exactly.
I admit that's something I struggle with.
Yeah,
It's easier to love the people who are easy to love.
of course.
But this parable pushes me to look deeper at where I'm holding back, you know?
It is a challenge for all of us.
Yeah.
It's a journey of growth and learning.
Right.
But the amazing thing is, God meets us right where we are, offering grace along the way.
So we've talked about living out our faith authentically, loving our neighbors, even the difficult ones.
Right.
It seems like humility is a big theme in these chapters of Luke.
You're absolutely right. From the disciples finding joy in simply knowing they belong to God, to that humble request for daily bread in the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
There's this constant thread of recognizing we need God.
It reminds us that we're not the center of everything,
Exactly.
that we need God in every area of our lives.
Yes, and that humility helps us live with more gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
appreciating that everything we have is a gift. It frees us from clinging too tightly to things.
Do you think that humility changes how we serve others?
I think it has to. When we come from a place of humility, our focus shifts.
How so?
Instead of wanting credit for our good deeds, we're just channels for God's love.
It becomes less about us and more about making a difference.
Exactly. It's about letting go of control and letting God work through us.
It's amazing how these teachings from so long ago are still relevant,
It really is.
especially in a world obsessed with ego and power and stuff.
It shows how powerful the gospel message is.
Yeah.
It speaks to our deepest desires for meaning and purpose.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening.
Glad to hear it.
I feel like I understand these passages better
That's great.
and how they apply to my life now. What stands out to you as the most important thing from these chapters of Luke?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey through these chapters.
It has.
If I had to pick one thing for our listener to take away,
Okay.
it's that true fulfillment, it doesn't come from what we achieve or get in this world, but from aligning our lives with God's purpose and letting His love flow through us.
I love that. It's so simple, but so deep.
It is.
And it brings everything we talked about together.
It does. Whether it's about that mission Jesus gave His disciples, learning to pray with open hearts, or loving our neighbors radically,
Right.
it all comes back to surrendering to God's will.
So before we finish up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's one practical thing our listeners could do this week to put these teachings into action?
I'd say spend some time with the Lord's Prayer,
Okay.
not just reciting it out of habit,
Right.
but really think about what each phrase means.
Yeah.
Like, what would it look like to hallow God's name in your everyday life?
Mm-hmm.
How could you be a part of bringing His kingdom here and now?
Yeah.
Where are you holding back from trusting God to provide?
It's easy to rush through those familiar prayers
It is.
without really thinking about them.
We all do it.
I know I have.
But when we slow down and listen with our hearts,
Yeah.
those words can guide our lives. It's like an ongoing chat with God,
Right.
a way to align what we want with what He wants.
And it doesn't have to just be during those formal prayer times, right?
Not at all.
We can invite God into every part of our day, asking for His help in our decisions, finding comfort in Him when things are hard,
Absolutely.
celebrating the good times with a grateful heart.
That's the beautiful thing about a relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's woven into everything.
It is.
And as we nurture that relationship,
Yeah.
we start to experience deeper purpose, peace, and joy.
It goes beyond our circumstances.
It does.
This deep dive has been so enriching.
I'm glad to hear it.
I feel like I have a new understanding of these chapters and how relevant they are to my life now.
That's great.
It's been a pleasure exploring these timeless truths with you.
Likewise.
And I hope our listener feels empowered to engage with these scriptures in a fresh way, discovering the wisdom they hold for us today.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
May we all keep seeking God's guidance as we navigate life,
Yes.
trusting in His unwavering love